The click of an empty gun barrel starts off episode 601, titled Black Day. Haunted by visions of his dead first wife Grace and the unknown man I can't defeat, Tommy pulls the trigger only to find Arthur remove the bullets from his gun and ignominiously plops face down in the mud. Still very much alive, second wife Lizzie finds him wallowing in the dirt, calls him a coward and gives him the bullets should he want to finish the job, which is hurtful. We learn the mostly assassination plot was ruined by the IRA after Tommy receives a call from femme fatale Captain Swing, who we last saw in Peaky Blinders Season 5, Episode 2, Yeah, I forgot about her too. We need to keep Mr. Mosley alive. That's all you need to know, she says mysteriously, but they were nice enough to bring back the bodies of the dead, which includes Abrama Gold, Aidan Gillen, and Aunt Polly, who is given a proper gypsy funeral, which apparently means being set on fire in your caravan. Her son, Michael Gray, Finn Cole, blames Tommy for her death and pledges revenge. Big text in all caps tells us it's now, 4 years later, on Miquelon Island. Where the fuck is that? Oh, it's in Newfoundland, French territory, the text explains. A newly sober Tommy prepares to meet up with Michael and his gang, but not before he beats up a couple surly Frenchmen and shoots a pigeon. Tommy says prohibition is coming to an end and it's time to diversify, and by diversify he means opium. Michael now works for his wife's uncle, who's repeatedly referred to as a South Boston gangster because, like, of course, Bay State gangsters are only ever from South Boston. Someone tell the script writers Whitey Bulger was from Somerville. Michael's crew are total massholes to Tommy, but that's okay because he's a jerk too and narcs on Michael after giving him a giant bag of drugs. Michael is visited in prison by his wife Gina Gray, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who has become a big star since appearing in Peaky Blinders Season 5 with a bad New York accent she's since dropped. She makes her entrance to Joy Division's Disorder, which is the coolest cinch of the episode though somewhat incongruous. Gina asks Michael why he's doing business with Tommy again and he says they have unfinished business. I think he means revenge. While Michael rots in jail, Gina cuts loose to some jazz and pours her first legal drink since 1920. Tommy shows up to talk opium biz, but Gina says, no deal. Tommy says if her uncle doesn't buy, he'll sell his opium to the East Boston Jews, relatives of everybody's favorite London gangster, Alfie Solomons, which is a good thing since it means Tom Hardy will be coming back. While Tommy celebrates by shagging a Beantown prostitute, his good time comes to an end when Lizzie calls from overseas to say their daughter is sick with fever and speaking gypsy and having visions of a man with green eyes, which is apparently a very, very bad. Tommy rushes back to England but not before visiting Michael in prison to exchange unpleasantries. Though not quite the big bang of past premieres, Season 6's first episode has lit several fuses that could blow the Peaky Blinders' fortunes sky high. The question is who else will get caught in the blast. Polly's prophetic message that one of them will die hangs heavy over Tommy as he returns home at the start of Episode 2 of Peaky Blinders Season 6. Ruby seems to be doing better now, having recovered from her fever, as Tommy even rechecks to make sure she's 100%, which she is. Lizzie is losing her patience with Tommy, who promises that this is one last business deal that needs to be done. Once that's finished, then they can go back to playing happy families. The thing is, Tommy has retired before and that didn't turn out too well. This time, Lizzie likens herself to a list and doesn't have the same enthusiasm she once did for Tommy's promises. That night, Tommy ends up having a seizure in the bathroom, with fragments on the past bleeding back through. With cuts and scrapes all over him, Ada races in and patches him up. She urges him to see a doctor but Tommy refuses. At least until he stops Mosley and his current business. Part of that comes from a rousing speech for the Labour Party, given he's still their representative. He gives a rousing speech, using both compassion and passion, promising they won't be silenced and bringing their concerns back to Westminster with him. It works a treat too, and with the people cheering, he reminds them all that the key here is silence, at least until Bull Ring Market, where they intend to protest together and bring down this broken government. Laura McKee shows up to see the tail end of this speech while a surprisingly neutered Arthur stands by her side. At least until after the meeting, as is found with a syringe in his arm. Anyway, McKee and Tommy's meeting gets underway, but on Tommy's terms, which include going to his bar and drinking water again. Tommy presents a letter from the US president, catching McKee completely off guard, as he reveals the truth of Jack's mission. The reality is, he's heading over on a recon mission to see proof of fascism in full swing. Tommy sees that as an opportunity for him and McKee to work together, pointing out that politics is like a circle: go far enough left and far enough right and you're bound to meet somewhere in the middle. Tommy is going to play puppet master from the middle, making sure he gets Nelson to meet Oswald and play both their ideologies against one another. He also offers McKee a seat at the table if she agrees to work with him, which she does. Ada is caught in the middle of this, and it's hard not to feel sorry for her. Between mourning the loss of Polly, she has to juggle Tommy's unhinged nature and constant scheming, along with Arthur falling off the deep end and doing opium. Eventually she makes her choice and decides not to follow Tommy into this coming war. Tommy shrugs it off and visits Alfie, who's even more unhinged than before. He's withdrawn into himself and taken to opera, given it reminds him of the Italian soldiers whom he plunged bayonets into in the past. Tommy reveals that Alfie's uncle, Charlie, has passed away at the hands of Jack and his gang. He was shot in the Cotton Club. Alfie needs a final act for his opera, and Tommy may just be singing to the right tune. And that tune is to the sum of 5 tons of opium that he can smuggle out, helping to rise the Solomons back into power in Boston. Tommy shows up at Mosley's rally, but there's a problem. Arthur shows up at the front door, ranting and raving, completely out of it. Mosley invited him along and encouraged him to wear a black shirt too. Tommy sorts him out though, taking him aside to talk. The black shirt is a clever ploy from Mosley, given that's the name of the fascist paramilitary groups in Italy. Tommy realizes this and hurriedly has him changed into a white shirt to avoid hostility. Linder has been the only one to tame Arthur across this show, and Tommy knows this. He's actually spoken to her already and gets her to write correspondence to him, believing in forgiveness. In order for Arthur to communicate with her properly, Tommy demands his brother get clean. If he can do that for 2 weeks, then he'll be allowed to talk to Linder again. After a tense meet with Mosley and Diane, Tommy visits Nelson at a church, where they discuss their aspirations and what they've accomplished in business. Nelson cuts straight to the chase and reveals he wants to meet the fascists. Tommy agrees to give him a full report on Churchill's strategies, given his closely aligned to the British MP, in exchange for South Boston and his opium. Tommy drives a hard bargain, and although Jack threatens him, you can tell there's also an air of respect there too. Tommy takes this same never say die attitude into Parliament, playing his part well by promising new reform in housing. After the session, word reaches Tommy that Ruby is sick again. She's seeing the Grey Man, who promises that he's coming for Tommy too. When Tommy heads into his office, someone tries to attack him, but Tommy turns knife on this soot-covered assailant and plunges it deep into his chest. Only, he doesn't. This was all a vision, and as he regains consciousness, Lizzie rings and urges Tommy to come home, pointing out that Ruby is sick and nothing seems to be working. With all other options exhausted, Tommy rings Esme Shelby Lee, John's widow from seasons back, to help try and save Ruby's life before it's too late. The episode starts with Tommy and Liz's daughter being diagnosed with tuberculosis. Tommy thinks it's his fault and punishment for his various misdeeds because, of course, everything is about him. Rather than stay at the hospital with his wife and child, he embarks on one of his periodic gypsy vision quests to find Esme Shelby Lee, his brother John's widow, who he hopes will have some supernatural miracle cure. Speaking of brothers, I don't like to gossip, but uncouth and often unhinged older Shelby brother Arthur, Paul Anderson, has been getting high on his own supply and is now battling an opium addiction. This makes him more uncouth and more unhinged than usual. His dispatch to Liverpool to deal with dock worker Hayden Stagg, played by British actor Stephen Graham, who's been selling the Shelbys dope out the back door of their warehouse. Graham was first rumored to be joining the cast after season 4 when it was revealed the Shelbys were selling bootleg gin to Chicago mafia boss Al Capone. Having played Capone on HBO's Boardwalk Empire, fans hoped Graham would reprise the role on Peaky Blinders, but instead he's playing Stagg, who avoids a beatdown by getting inside Arthur's head and talking about his own opiate addiction. It's completely unbelievable but a good monologue and gives Graham an opportunity to flex his native Scouse accent. While Tommy's off searching for gypsy caravans, his sister Ada Thorne, Sophie Rundle, is left in charge of the family business. Among her duties is overseeing the introduction of Jack Nelson, Irish-American gangster businessman, to Mosley. Before that happens, Ada faces off with Mosley's new squeeze, Lady Diana Mitford, for light flirting and condescension. Mitford, played by Amber Anderson, tosses off one-liners like, "I don't read novels. I read only pornography and politics, and, you know I like to F***K women as well as men." She then tells Ada that when the Great Cleansing happens she'll argue that gypsies should be spared, which is like the worst pickup line ever. Nelson, James Frischeville, later shows up with his niece, Gina Gray, and delivers one of the creepiest smiles of all time before saying of Mitford, "It's amazing what English upper-class women can do with just skin, bone and arrogance." Oh snap! Gina is played by the Queen's Gambit breakout star Anya Taylor-Joy but, sadly, there's not a lot for her to sink her teeth into. Gina is a pawn caught between powerful men, rather than as a power broker herself, such as Ada or the much-missed Aunt Polly. Meanwhile, Tommy is up in the mountains with King horse thieves and sorcerers, as Lizzie put it. When he finally reaches the gypsy heartland it looks not unlike the Rocky Crow where Tim the Enchanter lived in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Was he a gypsy too? Tommy finds Esme, who now looks like the bassist in a 90s grunge band, takes him to a gypsy graveyard to learn the source of the curse afflicting his daughter. Okay, bear with me. Back in Season 3, Episode 2, Tommy unknowingly gave his wife Grace a cursed sapphire which she wore on the night of her murder. Tommy then went on another gypsy vision quest in the next episode, pawning off the gem on gypsy wise woman Bethany Boswell. According to Esme, Bethany gave the sapphire to her sister who gave it to her 7-year-old daughter who quickly developed a cough and died. I'm guessing it's the girl's mother that laid the curse, Esme says, which is messed up because Tommy totally told everyone the jewel was cursed. Also, their last name is now Basewell. Maybe they were just mad he got their name wrong. At this point, Tommy looks at the little girl's grave and asks Esme, "Do you have whiskey?" Bye sobriety. Not only does Esme not have whiskey, she doesn't think there's anything to do to lift the curse. She's right. Tommy rushes back to the hospital only to learn that Ruby has just died. If history has taught us anything about the Shelbys, there's going to be hell to pay. We're just past the halfway mark of Peaky Blinders' 6th and final season and the stage is set for big changes that will forever mark the Shelby family. Since the series began, protagonist Thomas Shelby has lost a wife, Grace in Season 3, a brother, John in Season 4, and an aunt, Polly at the start of Season 6, but none have been as sad as the death of his young daughter Ruby last episode from tuberculosis. Episode 4, titled Sapphire, opens with her funeral. Gold doesn't work, that was the last message that Ruby taught us, Tommy says enigmatically at her funeral. Before her gypsy caravan is set ablaze in the same fashion as Polly's 4 episodes ago, Tommy and his wife Lizzie look at her one last time. United in grief, Tommy pledges to make the world a better place. Whether he'll stick to his word remains to be seen. The devils who did this will pay, Ruby, he then says, which, oh yeah, he's going to make them pay bar Erard. I said Tommy Shelby is a man who likes his revenge served cold. Turns out he likes it piping hot, too. Rather than stick around to grieve with his wife and son, Tommy heads to the woodland camp of the Basewells, the gypsy family whose hex he blames for Ruby's death. I'm here on behalf of the Blue Sapphire, he says, referencing the cursed jewel that started all the trouble in the first place, before mowing a bunch of them down with a machine gun. Vengeance, however, fails to give him peace of mind. Afterwards, Esme tells him that though he's lost a daughter, he's about to gain a son. It turns out before going off to war, Tommy knocked up a woman who later gave birth to a child he never knew about. He calls himself Duke. His mother is dead. He's a thief. He works the fairground but he says he wants more to life than big wheels and carousels, she says. Like father, like son. Back home, Tommy tells Lizzie he's going to change the world for the better, but she knows he's once again got blood on his hands. Down in the wine cellar, Tommy has a heart-to-heart with his brother Arthur, who's more damaged than usual. It's a wonderful scene that hammers home the Shelbys' brotherly bond and also the fact that actors Cillian Murphy and Paul Anderson don't look at all related. Tommy then has first drink of alcohol in years, and Arthur asks how he'll kick opium if Tommy can't stay off the booze. "You'll stop because the family needs you to," Tommy replies, which only answers half the question. Despite only 4 days earlier having put his kid in the ground, put his kid in the burning gypsy caravan funeral pyre, Tommy calls a late-night meeting between the various fascist emissaries he's trying to infiltrate and undermine. While Irish-American gangster politician Jack Nelson awkwardly flirts with fash-loving IRA dame Laura McKee, future Mrs. Oswald Mosley, Diana Mitford, brags about having breakfast with Hitler while watching Jews forced to eat grass, which is so F***KED up even Nelson and McKee are left agog. Nelson says he'll get in the ear of US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt about how the Mosleys represent the mood of England. Meanwhile, McKee will help turn the Irish proletariat from national unity to fascism. The camera rapidly spins around the table as they lay out their plan, cigar in one hand, crystal rocks glass full of whiskey in the other, which comes off kind of silly despite the disturbingly timely subject matter. Tommy is asked to prove his allegiance by hailing and saying "Perish Judah," an actual British fascist slogan, and is subsequently given the green light to start importing opium into Boston. Days later, Tommy gets tipped off that Mosley's been chupping Gina Gray, Nelson's niece and the wife of Tommy's cousin and rival Michael. Believing Nelson will disown her if he finds out she's banging his business partner behind his back, Tommy blackmails her for information about Mosley's upcoming meeting with the Nazis in Berlin. Before leaving, he asks what Michael's intentions are and says, "If you lie, I will know." She's like, "Nah, you guys are good," and Tommy laughs off her deception. Gina has no choice but to say, F***K. Feeling pretty good about himself, Tommy decides to finally open the letter from the family doctor marked urgent. After reading that it's a matter of urgency, which is rather redundant, Tommy meets with his personal physician, Dr. Holford, who he says has got an inoperable tumor and a little over a year to live. Bummer Juiud. Oh well, looks like Tommy better work a little harder to change the world before he ends up in a gypsy caravan bonfire of his own. The Shelby family find themselves in a familiar position, up Shites Creek without a paddle. Arthur's battling drug addiction, Ader's fighting Nazi street thugs, and Tommy. OOF, where to start? Since last episode, he's lost his daughter, lost his sobriety, and he just found out he's got a year or two to live due to an inoperable medical condition. While this is usually the setup for him to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, the series keeps you on the edge of your seat until the gun smoke clears. If Tommy has one reason to celebrate, it's that he's found out he has another son, Duke, actually his name's Erasmus but don't call him that, born before he went off to World War I. He can't read or write but is a pretty good pickpocket and doesn't like people, so he fits right in and actually does look like he could be actor Cillian Murphy's offspring. He's put to work at the Shelby's betting parlor but prefers Uncle Charlie's yard where he can care for horses, proving he's cut from the same cloth as his father. Tommy, meanwhile, has a plan for Arthur to beat his opium cravings, drive his dealers out of Birmingham and bring back his ex-wife, Linda. Tommy offers to donate £10,000 to her children's missionary if she agrees to help her ex on his road to redemption. She says that though she'll never forgive Arthur for his litany of sins, including the disfigurement of her boyfriend last seasons, perhaps the Lord will, and the money sweetens the deal. "I need to look after everyone in the family," Tommy tells Linda, which explains a lot about his character. While Tommy endeavors on behalf of his brother and son, his marriage is falling apart. After the death of their daughter Ruby, he takes his wife Lizzie to a hotel for a change in scenery and after making love tells her, "I know she's still here with us," which is actually really creepy. Lizzie says she hates their palatial mansion now and wishes she could blow it up. Tommy says marrying her is his biggest regret because not only did she marry a man, you married a curse. Wow. Such a romantic. The Grim Reaper's gone nothing on Tommy Shelby when it comes to sweet-talking the ladies. Back at Peaky Blinders HQ in Birmingham, Arthur and the lads deal with a pesky referee unwilling to participate in their fixed football games. When the ref tells them to bend it like Beckham, Arthur makes disgraced footballer now Peaky Blinders bookie Billy Grade make his bones, killing him with a garrote. Though it's the first time we've seen Grade all season, he plays a big role in the current plotline. It was Billy that tipped the IRA off about the attempted Mosley assassination, and he continues to feed them info about the Shelby operation. He's later cornered by Jack Nelson in a bathhouse, who puts his dangly bits in a garrote, which looks like it really hurts. Nelson explains that while him and his associates are going to take care of Tommy Shelby, they need Billy to serve up Arthur. Actor James Frecheville, who plays Nelson, does tough pretty good even if his Boston accent is still wanting. If Billy doesn't comply, he'll receive the Italian death. Because it was the Italians that taught me that above God, above children, above his wife and above his mother, most of all, a man loves his balls, which, you know, is fairly accurate. While others scheme against him, Tommy finds time to meet with Lady Diana Milford, the future Mrs. Oswald Mosley, to discuss his charitable work. The only work she's interested in, however, is sex. Oswald has F***KED your wife, so my suggestion is about balance and proportion. It would be only fair. After they bonk, Tommy hallucinates that he's back in the tunnels in World War I and sees a pile of his victims, including the Basewell family that he gunned down last episode. Back home, Tommy and Lizzie entertain Nelson, who's a pretty crap dinner guest, before the Mosleys crash the party. Oswald congratulates everyone on all the good work they are doing for fascism, and Lady Diana lets it drop that she and Tommy did some good work between the sheets, telling Lizzie, "You are a very lucky woman to have each day what I have only sampled once." Lizzie storms off, which was actually the Mosleys' intention all along. "She doesn't deserve you, Mr. Shelby," says Mosley. What with the new fascist world order at hand, Mosley says Tommy needs a more suitable spouse, not a former Birmingham prostitute. Tommy agrees, but not in the way Mosley means it. After pouring his first whiskey in years, Tommy lays into his dinner guests, saying, "Truth is, I belong here at this table with F***'cause like you. She doesn't. For all I tried to hide it, I'm just one of you." Could there be a sadder ending, eh? Well folks, that ending is near. After 6 seasons, Peaky Blinders is about to unveil its final episode. Will Tommy Shelby pull everything off and vanquish his enemies before the series finishes, or will he go off to the big gypsy caravan in the sky? Only Aunt Polly can say for sure. Just ask her son Michael Gray, who's released from prison in episode 5's final moments and has murder on his mind. After 6 thrilling seasons, Peaky Blinders is coming to an end as an episodic series, though its creators promise a movie in the future. With the fates of not just the Shelby clan but the entire United Kingdom at stake, Tommy is rushing to tie up loose ends before he dies from an inoperable tumor he may have contracted from his daughter Ruby before she perished from tuberculosis. The tumor, however, won't be a problem if cousin Michael Gray, Finn Cole, gets to him first. Fresh out of prison, he plans to kill Tommy, who he blames for the death of his mother, Aunt Polly. His wife Gina, Anya Taylor-Joy, suggests that he kills off Arthur and Tommy's sons too, which is cold, but does make sense when you consider the Shelby ability to hold a grudge. Speaking of grudges, Lizzie's still nursing a pretty big one after learning last episode that Tommy shagged Lady Diana Mitford, fiancée to fascist Frenemesis, you know, like Frenemy and Nemesis, yeah, just made it up, Oswald Mosley. She leaving him, and Tommy's son Charlie wants to go with her, saying, "You're not my mum but you're more my mum than my dad." Ouch. Meanwhile, Uncle Charlie tells Tommy's newfound other son Duke, "It's time you joined the family. But you're not just going to be a soldier. You're going to be a general someday." Tommy assembles the Peaky Blinders at the Garrison pub to tell them he needs them to empty his home of valuables while he meets with Michael in Canada. Arthur offers up that he's having dinner with Linda that same night at the Garrison. IRA informant Billy Grade listens intently and passes the information on to the Shelby's enemies. Back at the offices of Shelby Company Limited, Arthur tells Tommy he knows about his fatal tumor. Tommy says he just needs a little more time to set everything up for the future. F***ku and your F***king plans, Arthur replies before imploding emotionally. Some of the best writing this season has been Tommy and Arthur's scenes together, with Murphy and actor Paul Anderson imbuing them with an affecting realism that speaks to the characters' fraternal bond yet dueling temperaments. The 82-minute episode's action-packed second-third intercuts between the various murder plots, recalling Francis Ford Coppola's work in the Godfather movies. While Duke and the gang plan to murder Grade at Tommy's mansion, Arthur faces off with Linder McKee and the IRA in Small Heath in an epic shootout that's a masterful blend of cinematography and pacing. Tommy returns to his mansion in time to level it to make way for council estates. After ambiguously telling them he's going away for a while, he makes his exit. A month later, we see him living in a gypsy caravan and planning his suicide. Before he can pull the trigger, his daughter Ruby's ghost appears to tell him he's not even sick. In an old newspaper, Tommy spots the physician who told him he was dying among the guests at the Mosley's fascist all-star wedding in Berlin, which must really burn considering he was invited too. After confronting the doctor, he learns his illness was a ruse. He returns to his campsite to find his caravan on fire and rides off on his horse into the sunset, or rather, until the Peaky Blinders movie comes out in a couple years.
I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe.